We begin our report with the fifth day of the ceasefire in the Middle East. Hamas released 12 more hostages being held in Gaza Tuesday. The group includes 10 Israelis and 2 Thai citizens. None of the hostages are American. The Israel Defense Forces say Red Cross representatives have transferred them to Egypt. Since last Friday, Hamas has released 81 hostages. In exchange, Israel has freed 180 Palestinian prisoners. Both groups consist mostly of women and children. CBS News correspondent Lilia Luciano has more from Tel Aviv.
9 women, most elderly, a teen and 2 Thai citizens, walked from the hands of Hamas to freedom on the 5th day of the temporary truce. Merav Tal, dragged from her home in Kibbutz Nir Oz, was released. Her partner, Yair, was not. And 17-year-old Mia Lemberg was held and released with her dog, Bella. In the West Bank, Ahmed Salameh, a 14-year-old, was the youngest among 30 women and children released today by Israel in the exchange. The relative calm of the truce had water, food, and fuel trickling into Gaza as the U.S. airlifted more than 54,000 pounds of humanitarian aid for the 1.8 million displaced and stuck within the enclave's borders. As we learn more from the Israeli hostages about their conditions in captivity.
She told me sometime the food was not enough and the water was not enough. She told me in some points they had a small bottle of water for each person for 2 days.
Yair Rotem says his niece, 13-year-old Ilah, emerged on Saturday thinner, pale, and quieter, but is improving.
Because she said the terrorists made them speak very quiet all the time. They're hushing them. Yeah, they whisper. At night, they didn't want them to talk at all. And at the daytime, they told them to speak very quiet. So she's like whispering.
In defying the terms of the deal, Hamas separated Ilah from her mother, Raya, who is still captive.
What has she said about that moment? Was she able to talk to her mom? What happened?
Terrorists came and they just took Emily and Hila. And then they said, okay, just 2 of you, we're going out. Of course, it was a very sad moment. And Hila said they allow her to go and give Raya a hug.
In Tel Aviv today, an outcry in orange balloons demanding the release of the youngest hostage of all, 10-month-old Kfir Bibaz, as well as his 4-year-old brother Ariel and their parents. There are up to 9 Americans believed to be held captive, including 19-year-old Itai Chen.
The fact that your son is a soldier, an Israeli soldier, does that worry you that he's in any kind of different position?
Yeah, it's difficult to answer that one. We just have to hope that the fact that he is a U.S. citizen, maybe that gives him maybe an extra layer of protection, but I don't think it matters too much to Hamas.
And Lilia joins us now from Tel Aviv, Israel. Lilia, Hamas has freed mostly women and children so far. So what does that mean for the men being held hostage, which includes the 9 Americans? Does that represent a whole very different set of conditions?
That means that the deal needs to be expanded, John. So far, the initial deal that was for a 4-day, I'm not going to call it a truce, but a temporary truce, in exchange for 50 hostages. The whole time it included women and children. Not all of the children who are believed to be in Hamas captivity have been returned. The Bibas brothers, which include the youngest hostage in captivity, a 10-month-old who was 9 months old and just taking formula when he was abducted, his 4-year-old brother, Ariel, and both of his parents are still in captivity. There has been reporting and there has been messaging from Hamas that has varied along the way about why that family hasn't been released, given that there's children. Part of the deal, too, was that mothers wouldn't be separated from their children. And we spoke with the uncle of one of the hostages who was released, whose mother is still in captivity. So clearly that part of the deal wasn't exactly met. It's possible that because there are other groups that also were taking care or were hiding the hostages rather than taking care, that were keeping the hostages, that is not only Hamas, including the Palestinian Islamic Jihad and other groups. It's possible that they've lost track of these people. So this is just still talking about women and children. For the men to take part of the deal, for perhaps the soldiers, which from our reporting, from what we understand, talking to people here on the ground, people from the IDF, family members, even negotiators, it seems like the hostages would be last in line. especially the men, to be freed. That means that there's a lot more diplomacy that needs to take place. You know how complicated arriving at the initial deal was. Finally, there were 2 more days of a ceasefire, a temporary ceasefire. That could be extended, and perhaps after that we could start seeing some maybe elderly men. We've talked to the family of a 79-year-old, other elderly people who are still in captivity, people who have different kinds of health conditions and ailments, and just elderly people who might need more medical attention or resources or food and et cetera. So we'll see, but what it means is a whole lot more of diplomatic efforts. Right now, we know that today the director of the CIA, Bill Burns, was in Doha, part of these negotiations. Secretary of State Blinken is going to be here in Tel Aviv, in the West Bank, and in the UAE to continue negotiating. So those efforts are still being made, but for now, no changes have been made beyond 10 hostages for every day of a ceasefire, and 3 Palestinian prisoners. Up until now, it's been women and children for every Israeli hostage released.
And finally, Lilia, we know this ceasefire, if the U.S. efforts to extend it don't work out, the ceasefire is scheduled to end on Wednesday. So what are the expectations for when that happens?
Look, there's a lot of hope right now, John, and a lot of efforts, really, from all parts involved in these negotiations, from the U.S., from Qatar, even Egypt, to extend the ceasefire. The need for aid, for humanitarian aid in Gaza, where 1.8 million people are displaced from their homes. That is the vast majority of the population, where, according to the Ministry of Health, which is run by Hamas, there have been around 14,000 people who have been killed, many of them children, many of them women. The aid is absolutely essential. So in order for the aid to continue coming in, including more than 50,000 pounds of supplies coming from the U.S., there needs to be that stopping and fighting for longer than these 2 extra days. So for that to happen, more diplomacy, more negotiations, and certainly from Hamas, more hostages getting across here to Israel.
Lilia Luciano in Tel Aviv. Thank you so much.
Thank you.